Humanity had once been proud, ambitious, and full of hope, believing that they could shape the galaxy in their image. But the galaxy was not kind to them. Centuries ago, after a series of misunderstandings and conflicts over resources, territory, and ideas, humans were forced into exile. Entire fleets were sent away. Planets were cut off, and the remnants of the species were scattered to the far edges of known space. The Galactic Council, a coalition of advanced civilizations, had judged them harshly, claiming that humanity was reckless, unpredictable, and a danger to the fragile peace of the galaxy. No one questioned their decision at the time. Humans were dismissed as a species that had overreached, one that would struggle to survive in the vast emptiness of exile. Yet, as they drifted into the dark corners of the universe, away from the eyes of the powerful and the proud, humanity did not vanish. They did not crumble under the weight of exile. Instead, they adapted. Planets once considered inhospitable became home. They built cities in deserts of red dust, underground networks in frozen wastelands, and floating habitats in gas giants' upper atmospheres. Each world demanded its own survival strategies, and each world shaped the humans who lived there. Those who survived were stronger, more patient, and sharper than ever before. For the first generation of exiles, life was a brutal test. They faced starvation, dangerous wildlife, unpredictable weather, and constant isolation. Families were broken and rebuilt in new ways. Communities formed through sheer necessity. People who had once relied on technology and trade now learned to survive with little more than their wits, determination, and a stubborn refusal to give up. Children grew up learning how to hunt, gather, and craft tools that could withstand extremes that no one in the old worlds could imagine. Every small victory against the harshness of their environment became a lesson, every loss a memory that fueled a deeper drive. Time passed, and as generations were born in these distant worlds, humans began to thrive in ways that their exilers could not have imagined. Where others had feared loneliness and scarcity, humans saw opportunity. They explored the strange, unknown landscapes, learning to work with the new ecosystems rather than fight against them. They studied alien plants and creatures, discovering ways to use them for medicine, food, and building materials. Slowly, a new kind of society emerged, one that blended old knowledge with the lessons learned in exile. There were no kings or rulers in the old sense, but councils, communities, and families working together. Each voice counted, each skill valued. At the same time, humans began to look to the stars. Exile had cut them off, but it had also forced them to dream. Children born in the shadow of twin suns or in the faint glow of distant nebulae grew up staring at the night sky, wondering what waited beyond the darkness. They imagined the worlds that had cast them out, the civilizations that had written them off. They made tools, machines, and eventually ships that could carry them farther than their ancestors ever could have imagined. Each colony added to this growing strength. Some focused on science, inventing new technologies for faster travel or more efficient energy. Some focused on strategy, training leaders who could think 3 steps ahead of any enemy. Some focused on resource gathering, building vast networks that could support millions if needed. The story of exile became the story of survival. But survival was never enough. Humans began to dream not only of returning but of being recognized. They told stories of the old worlds, of the humiliation they had endured, and of the strength they had built in secret. Every child learned that while the galaxy might have thought them weak, it had underestimated them completely. And with every lesson, every discovery, every new ship, and every successful colony the humans prepared, they were quiet about it. They did not broadcast their progress or boast about their numbers. They worked in secret, knowing that patience would be their greatest weapon. The exiled humans also learned to rely on each other in ways that no one back home had ever expected. Trust was no longer given lightly. It had to be earned. Communities shared everything: knowledge, food, protection, and hope. Rivalries existed as they always do, but they were minor compared to the larger goal of survival and growth. Humans began to develop skills that would have seemed impossible centuries ago. Languages were created to communicate across worlds. Trade networks were established with precision, and strategies for warfare and defense were taught to all, even the youngest. As if survival itself demanded that every human be ready for anything. But humans were more than just survivors. They were dreamers. They built schools, libraries, and observatories. They wrote history, recorded knowledge, and told stories about the past. Children learned of the exile not just as a tragedy, but as a challenge to be overcome. They were taught to respect their environment, to understand alien life, and to innovate in ways that no one back on the exiling planets could have imagined. Every generation added something new: a faster ship, a stronger settlement, a better defense system, or a deeper understanding of the universe. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the humans were no longer a species merely trying to survive. They were becoming a species preparing to reclaim their place. Despite the hardships, despite the distance and the isolation, humanity held on to hope. They shared it with each other in quiet moments, a story told around a fire, a new invention revealed to the community, or a song sung in the dark when the wind howled across frozen plains. Hope was contagious. It became a bond that held communities together across worlds separated by light years. And it was hope, more than anything else, that fueled the secret growth of their fleets, the quiet innovation of their technologies, and the patient planning of their leaders. The exiles also learned from failure. Plans went wrong, settlements failed, crops died, and storms destroyed cities. But with every failure, they grew wiser. Humans learned to adapt, to innovate quickly, and to trust in their resilience. This was a species tempered by hardship, shaped by the most extreme challenges the universe could offer. Their skills were not just survival skills. They were the foundation for a civilization that could, one day, challenge the powers that had cast them aside. As the centuries passed, humans began to look back at the galaxy that had exiled them, with a mixture of determination and understanding. They had learned to survive without the support of others, to build societies that valued innovation, and to create technologies that would allow them to travel across the stars. But they also remembered the humiliation and the injustice. They did not forget the scorn, the fear, and the dismissal. It was not revenge that drove them. It was the desire to be recognized as equals, to prove that the galaxy had underestimated them, and to show that exile had only made them stronger. And so quietly, they prepared. Fleets were built, technologies perfected, and alliances between distant colonies strengthened. Every person, every settlement, every discovery was part of a larger plan that no one outside their hidden worlds could understand. When the day finally came for humanity to return to the galaxy that had once cast them out, they would not come as the humbled or desperate. They would come as a force shaped by centuries of survival, innovation, and unity. The galaxy had forgotten them, laughed at them, and dismissed them. But the humans had not forgotten the galaxy. They had learned, they had grown, and they had waited patiently for the right moment. By the end of the first millennium in exile, humans had transformed. They were no longer just survivors. They were architects, scientists, explorers, and strategists. They were a civilization that had learned to thrive where others thought they would perish. They were a people who had taken exile not as a punishment, but as a challenge to prove their worth. And though the galaxy may never have expected it, the humans were ready to reclaim what had been denied to them, ready to show that the species once exiled could now stand tall among the stars, feared, respected, and impossible to ignore. Humanity's story of exile was only the beginning. The quiet years of hardship, learning, and growth had forged them into something extraordinary. The galaxy that had once rejected them had no idea what was coming. And though they had been scattered across 1,000,000 worlds, humanity had become more united than ever before, bound by the shared memory of exile and the shared vision of a return that would change everything. Centuries of exile had changed humanity. They were no longer the scattered, desperate survivors of the past. On each hidden world, humans had learned to build, to adapt, and to grow stronger. What had once been a punishment had become an opportunity, a chance to transform themselves into a species capable of anything. The old worlds had written them off as weak and unimportant, but in secret humanity was rising quietly, steadily, and with precision. On distant planets, humans discovered things that challenged their understanding of life and the universe. They studied alien flora and fauna, learning which plants could provide food, which creatures could help in work, and which environments could be tamed for settlement. Communities developed unique skills depending on their world. Some became engineers of incredible machines, building ships and structures designed to survive even the harshest conditions. Others focused on agriculture, turning barren land into fertile fields that could sustain thousands. Others mastered sciences that allowed them to understand alien energies and harness them for power, communication, and defense. As each colony grew, they shared knowledge with the others. Human settlements were connected in a network of intelligence, resources, and expertise, even across the vast distances of space. Scouts and explorers traveled between worlds carrying ideas, designs, and news of discoveries. There was no central government, no single ruler, but there was a shared vision. Humanity would not only survive, it would thrive. And they would do so on their own terms, without waiting for approval from the galaxy that had cast them aside. Technology advanced at a rate the old worlds could never have imagined. Humans had been forced to innovate with limited resources, and necessity became the mother of invention. Ships capable of faster-than-light travel were developed quietly, long before the galaxy suspected humans had that ability. Weapons were designed for defense, for strategy, and for precision, not for blind destruction. Communities learned to combine their knowledge in ways that multiplied their strength, ensuring that every advance in one world could benefit 100 others. The result was a species growing in power and capability while remaining largely invisible to the rest of the galaxy. But the rise of humanity was not only about technology and strategy, it was about people. Humans developed a culture of learning, of cooperation, and of resilience. Children were taught from a young age the skills they would need to survive and excel. They were taught science and history, but also empathy, creativity, and critical thinking. Art, music, and storytelling flourished even in the most isolated colonies. These were not luxuries. They were a way of keeping communities connected, of passing down memories of exile, and of inspiring a generation that would one day reclaim the galaxy. Leadership emerged naturally among the humans. It was not about power for the sake of power, but about ability, vision, and responsibility. Those who led were respected because they had proven themselves in trials of survival, innovation, and diplomacy. Every decision mattered, for a mistake could cost a world. But leaders were not isolated. Councils and communities contributed to every choice. Decisions were debated, tested, and refined. Strategy became second nature to the people, a skill born from necessity and perfected through generations. Trade and resource management became a central part of humanity's hidden empire. Different worlds had different resources, and humans learned to balance scarcity and abundance across their network. Precious metals, rare minerals, and biological materials were transported across space, sometimes over decades-long journeys, to ensure that every community had what it needed. These trade routes were carefully guarded and secret. The galaxy saw humans as exiles with nothing, unaware that the exiles were quietly building an interstellar web of power, preparation, and knowledge. Humans also trained in ways the old worlds could not imagine. Every member of a community learned multiple skills, from survival and engineering to tactics and diplomacy. Soldiers were also scientists, engineers were also strategists, and leaders were also skilled in negotiation. This made the human species uniquely adaptable, able to respond to threats or opportunities with flexibility and precision. No one back in the galaxy expected a species once exiled to become so resourceful, so united, and so prepared. As the years passed, humans began to explore beyond their immediate colonies. Scouts mapped distant sectors of space, identifying planets suitable for settlement, star systems rich in resources, and potential allies or threats. Each journey was dangerous, but the humans had learned to value risk, seeing it as an opportunity to expand knowledge and power. Ships carried small teams, equipped with the latest technology capable of both exploration and self-defense. They returned with discoveries that added to the growing intelligence network, making each colony smarter, stronger, and more capable. The unity of humanity became its greatest strength. While some civilizations relied on centralized control or rigid hierarchies, humans thrived on collaboration and shared purpose. Their network of colonies communicated through advanced but discreet channels, ensuring that knowledge and resources flowed efficiently. When one world faced difficulty, others came to its aid. When a breakthrough occurred, it was shared. The species learned to trust in cooperation, knowing that together, they could overcome any challenge, even the most powerful empires that had once exiled them. But humans did not forget the galaxy that had rejected them. Memories of humiliation, scorn, and betrayal were preserved not as bitterness but as lessons. They studied the civilizations that had cast them out, learning their strengths, weaknesses, and habits. Stories of past defeats were taught to children as examples of caution, not despair. Every human learned to be patient, to plan carefully, and to think in ways that would allow them to act decisively when the moment finally came to return. The rise of humanity was also a quiet revolution of identity. While scattered across countless worlds, humans maintained a sense of shared culture, values, and purpose. Traditions evolved, but core principles endured: resilience, ingenuity, cooperation, and ambition. They celebrated their survival, honored their ancestors, and inspired each other with visions of the future. Humans learned to take pride in their exile, seeing it not as punishment but as the forge that had created a species capable of greatness. Science, technology, and strategy became inseparable from culture. Every discovery had practical and philosophical implications. Humans studied energy sources, faster than light travel, and advanced communication systems, while also exploring questions of morality, purpose, and coexistence with alien life. This blend of pragmatism and imagination created a civilization that was both highly capable and deeply thoughtful. Unlike many empires that relied solely on might, humans combined intellect, creativity, and strategy, making them unpredictable and formidable. As the centuries turned into millennia, humans reached a level of advancement that few civilizations could rival. They had fleets that could cross light years in months, technologies that could terraform or protect planets, and networks that connected 1,000,000 worlds in ways the galaxy could not perceive. And yet they remained invisible, patient, and disciplined. They knew that the time to act would come, and when it did, their return would not be a timid plea for recognition. It would be a calculated demonstration of power, unity, and intelligence. Every world played a role in this preparation. Some focused on building massive fleets, hidden in asteroid belts or cloaked within nebulae. Others specialized in research, unlocking new energy sources, advanced shields, or weapons that combined precision with efficiency. Others trained soldiers and strategists, ensuring that humanity could defend itself and act decisively. Even entertainment and art were part of the plan, keeping morale high and culture vibrant, ensuring that the human spirit remained strong across generations. By the end of this long era of preparation, humans were no longer just survivors of exile. They were masters of their own destiny. They had taken the pain of exile and transformed it into power, knowledge, and unity. Each colony, each fleet, each discovery had been a step toward reclaiming what they had lost. Not through desperation, but through skill, patience, and determination. The galaxy had written them off, but the humans had not written themselves off. They had grown quietly, secretly, into a species capable of returning in a way the galaxy would never forget. And so, humanity waited, watched, and prepared. The exiled who had once struggled to survive now held the knowledge, power, and unity to reshape the galaxy. Every generation had contributed to this invisible empire. Every challenge had strengthened it, and every failure had refined it. Humans had become patient, careful, and relentless, understanding that timing, planning, and preparation were as important as courage and strength. The secret rise of humanity was a story of survival, adaptation, and ambition. It was the story of a species that had been underestimated, dismissed, and exiled, and yet had turned every disadvantage into an advantage. The galaxy had believed that exile would break humanity, but exile had only made them stronger. The humans of these hidden worlds had learned to think, act, and plan across centuries, building an empire of knowledge, fleets, and alliances that no one outside could see. And in the quiet of the cosmos, humans continued to grow, waiting for. The galaxy had long forgotten humanity. They were whispered about in old stories as a reckless species that had been exiled, a cautionary tale for young civilizations. No one expected them to survive, let alone thrive. But far beyond the edge of the known galaxy, humans had grown quietly, patiently, preparing for a day when they would return. That day had arrived. It began with scouts. Small, swift ships capable of slipping past detection moved through the outer reaches of galactic space. Their mission was simple yet daring: to observe, to test, and to learn. These scouts were the first step in humanity's return, sent to gather information on the worlds that had once shunned them, the civilizations that had dismissed them, and the systems that might be allies or threats. Every scout mission was carefully planned, every move calculated with precision. The first contacts were cautious, almost accidental. Humans had no desire to reveal their strength too soon. On a small mining planet, a lone human scout ship appeared in orbit. The local authorities were confused, reporting an unknown vessel, but before they could respond with force, the humans transmitted messages of peace. They asked questions, learned about the planet's defenses, and shared minimal information about themselves. The encounter was brief, but it was enough to send ripples through the local system. As more scouts returned with data, it became clear that the galaxy had not changed as much as humans had hoped. Many worlds were still unprepared, their fleets scattered, their defenses outdated. Civilizations that had once looked down on humans continued their politics, trade, and rivalries, without knowledge of the quiet empire growing just beyond their borders. Humans studied these weaknesses carefully, noting which alliances could be influenced, which worlds could be swayed, and which civilizations might pose a threat if provoked. Despite their caution, humans were not invisible forever. Word began to spread of strange fleets and advanced ships appearing at the edge of known space. Some believed it was a new civilization, others dismissed it as rumors. But those who observed closely could see the patterns: intelligence gathering, strategic maneuvers, and precise calculations that no random fleet could achieve. The humans were not merely exploring, they were preparing. And the galaxy did not realize it yet, but it was about to meet a force unlike any it had seen. Humans made their first deliberate contact with a minor system that had previously been allied with one of the larger galactic powers. They transmitted messages of goodwill, offering knowledge, trade, and assistance. The response was cautious curiosity. Few expected humans to have anything of value after centuries of exile. But when the humans demonstrated their technology, small, seemingly simple devices that performed tasks impossible for the local engineers, the perception of them began to change. The scouts had brought more than intelligence, they brought proof that humans had not only survived, but advanced far beyond expectation. In some places, the response was fear. Local authorities who had once dismissed humanity now realized that their understanding had been entirely wrong. The human ships were faster, more durable, and equipped with technologies that no one had seen before. Their communication systems allowed them to coordinate across light years. Their defenses could withstand attacks that would destroy conventional fleets, and their strategies reflected centuries of careful study and planning. Rumors began to spread quickly, reaching capitals, military academies, and trade networks. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, and the revelation was shocking. The humans did not seek conflict, at least not yet. They understood the importance of perception. In their eyes, the galaxy had rejected them once. There was no need to repeat that mistake by acting recklessly. Instead, they offered glimpses of their strength, calculated shows of power that were enough to make others pause without initiating war. In some cases, they provided aid to planets in crisis, quietly demonstrating their ability to protect and support, building influence and respect without overt aggression. Each interaction was part of a strategy designed to reshape the galaxy's view of humanity. But not everyone reacted with curiosity or respect. Some civilizations responded with hostility, sending fleets to intercept human ships, attempting to assert dominance over what they assumed would be an easy target. These attempts failed quickly. Humans were prepared. They did not attack indiscriminately, but they defended themselves with precision, neutralizing threats without unnecessary destruction. Each encounter sent a clear message: humanity was no longer weak, and it would not be underestimated. The galaxy was starting to understand that the humans had returned with purpose. Behind the scenes, humans were also reconnecting their colonies. Long-separated worlds communicated with one another, sharing information, coordinating fleets, and preparing for the moment when they would act as one. The scouts' data allowed them to identify which civilizations could be influenced diplomatically, which might be intimidated into compliance, and which could become allies. Every decision was deliberate. Every action was measured. The humans had learned that the galaxy did not forgive recklessness, but it respected power and strategy. In some systems, humans' return caused political upheaval. Leaders who had once ignored or derided humanity found themselves forced to reconsider alliances and defenses. Plans that had relied on the assumption that humans were weak suddenly seemed inadequate. Economies and trade routes were adjusted as fear and curiosity spread. Some civilizations began secretly reaching out to humanity, seeking to understand their intentions and to avoid conflict. Even those who had dismissed the exiles were beginning to recognize that a new reality had emerged, one in which humanity held far more influence than anyone had predicted. As humans continued their cautious approach, they maintained strict discipline. They did not overextend. Every mission, every interaction, and every demonstration of power was designed to reinforce the perception of a species that was intelligent, capable, and united. They learned to read the reactions of others, adapting their strategy to maximize influence while minimizing risk. This was not conquest yet. It was the careful laying of the groundwork for the moment when humanity would step fully into the galaxy's awareness. Human communities across the hidden worlds celebrated the successes quietly. Children learned the stories of these first contacts as lessons in strategy, patience, and the importance of intelligence. Schools taught the history of exile alongside the new achievements, instilling a sense of pride and purpose. Every member of society understood their role, from engineers and strategists to scouts and leaders. The humans had become a species that valued knowledge, cooperation, and foresight as much as courage and strength. Despite their victories, humans never lost sight of humility. They had been exiled once and knew the consequences of underestimating others. Every encounter with an alien civilization was approached with caution and respect, even when humans were clearly more advanced. They understood that influence was earned, that fear could be a tool but not a foundation, and that alliances were stronger than domination. This combination of capability and wisdom set them apart from other civilizations, earning them a reputation that spread slowly but powerfully across the galaxy. The return was not without tension. Some humans argued for more aggressive tactics, pushing to assert dominance immediately. Others insisted on patience, stressing the importance of careful preparation and diplomacy. These debates strengthened humanity's approach, ensuring that when the time came for open recognition, every decision would be deliberate, every action calculated, and every strategy backed by centuries of experience. They were a species united not by fear but by shared purpose and careful planning. As the first human fleets moved beyond the outer edges of known space, the galaxy began to notice. Small skirmishes, unexpected technologies, and quiet interventions drew attention. Some civilizations attempted to investigate, only to find that humans were always one step ahead. Scouts reported back with astonishing tales of coordination and innovation, of strategies that anticipated every possible move, and of fleets that could operate independently, yet remain perfectly synchronized across vast distances. The humans had returned, and their presence was impossible to ignore. Even as the galaxy began to react, humans remained calm and controlled. They did not celebrate openly, for patience had been their greatest weapon. They had learned to wait for the right moment, to act only when conditions were favorable. Every success in these first contacts reinforced the confidence of human colonies and fleets. They were no longer exiles. They were a civilization ready to reclaim a place among the stars, prepared not through luck, but through strategy, skill, and unbroken unity. The first contact era taught humanity valuable lessons as well. They learned which civilizations could be trusted, which systems would resist, and which alliances might be formed without bloodshed. Every interaction added to a growing understanding of the galaxy's politics, trade, and culture. By the time humans were fully visible to the larger galactic community, they had already anticipated reactions, prepared solutions, and built networks that could influence events across light years. Their return was methodical, deliberate, and unstoppable. By the end of this phase, humans had accomplished something remarkable. They had reintroduced By the time humanity had made its presence known across the edges of the galaxy, the larger powers began to notice. The Galactic Council, a coalition of the oldest and most influential civilizations, had long assumed humans were gone, a failed species scattered to the winds. Now reports arrived of fleets operating with intelligence and coordination, unlike anything seen before. Ships appeared not in chaos but in precise formation, moving swiftly between systems, scouting, protecting, and demonstrating capability. For the first time in centuries, the Council was unsettled. At first, many dismissed the reports as exaggeration. Humans were a species that had been exiled, a species that should have struggled to survive. How could they now manage fleets, technologies, and strategies that rivaled the Council's own? But the more evidence arrived, the harder it became to deny the truth. Fleets that moved faster than conventional tracking systems, colonies that had grown into independent hubs of science and industry, and scouts that gathered intelligence with perfect efficiency, all pointed to the same conclusion. Humanity had returned, and it was prepared. The Council convened emergency meetings, sending diplomats, generals, and strategists to study the situation. Every report caused more anxiety. The humans were not merely surviving, they were thriving. Entire systems that had been dismissed as weak or unimportant were suddenly connected to a larger network of resources, knowledge, and power. Humans were no longer isolated survivors. They were an organized civilization capable of planning on a scale the Council had never anticipated. Panic spread quietly, not in chaos, but in subtle shifts of policy. Leaders who had once dismissed humans began reevaluating their fleets and defenses. Training programs were accelerated and new alliances were hastily considered. Some smaller civilizations reached out, hoping to understand humans' intentions before it was too late. Others attempted to prepare for conflict, bolstering defenses and mobilizing fleets. It was clear that the galaxy had underestimated humanity, and that miscalculation had consequences that could no longer be ignored. Humans, however, did not seek unnecessary conflict. They understood that power was more effective when combined with strategy, patience, and diplomacy. Their initial moves were deliberate, calculated to demonstrate strength without provoking outright war. They communicated with distant systems, offering assistance, trade, and alliance, carefully testing responses. In some cases, they provided protection against threats that the Council or local powers could not handle alone. These acts were small, precise demonstrations of capability, enough to build respect while keeping humanity's ultimate strength largely hidden. But the Council could not ignore the humans' growing influence for long. Systems that had once relied on the Council's guidance began to question old alliances. Some openly reached out to humans, seeking protection or partnership. Others began to secretly plan contingencies, knowing that the humans' arrival had shifted the balance of power. Entire political structures trembled under the realization that a species once exiled was now a force to be reckoned with. Humans had transformed from a forgotten people into a key player in galactic affairs, and the Council had no choice but to respond. The humans themselves watched closely, understanding the delicate balance of influence and power. They studied the Council's reactions, noting which leaders were cautious, which were aggressive, and which could be swayed through diplomacy. They did not act recklessly, knowing that the perception of patience and control amplified their power. Every fleet movement, every message sent, and every demonstration of technology was part of a larger strategy designed to shape the galaxy's understanding of humanity. In several systems, the humans demonstrated their strength openly, but in controlled ways. A fleet might appear in orbit around a contested planet not to attack, but to secure peace and stability. Technology previously considered impossible was displayed in small, precise ways. Shields that could withstand bombardment, engines that could traverse vast distances in record time, and communication systems that allowed coordination across light years. Civilizations observing these demonstrations began to understand that humans were no longer a species to dismiss. They were strategic, disciplined, and united. As the Council scrambled to respond, humans continued to expand their network of influence. They established contact with civilizations that had once been neutral or hostile, offering cooperation and protection. Many accepted, recognizing that humans' capabilities were too significant to ignore. Humans did not demand loyalty or obedience outright, but their reputation grew as a species capable of delivering results where others had failed. This was influence without conquest, respect earned through action and intelligence rather than brute force. Not all reactions were positive. Some powers attempted to challenge humanity's growing presence, sending fleets to test their capabilities. These encounters were carefully managed by humans. They responded with precision, neutralizing threats without unnecessary destruction, demonstrating that they were not only powerful, but disciplined. These engagements sent a clear message. Humanity could defend itself against any threat, yet it preferred strategy over aggression. The galaxy began to realize that this was not a species driven by recklessness or emotion, but by planning, unity, and intelligence. Meanwhile, humans continued to coordinate internally. Fleets and colonies communicated seamlessly across vast distances, sharing intelligence and resources with incredible efficiency. Training, research, and development were ongoing, ensuring that humanity's capabilities continued to grow. Every system had a purpose, every fleet a role, and every individual understood their part in a larger plan. This level of organization was unprecedented in the galaxy, and gave humanity an edge that could not be matched by any single power. The Council, observing these developments, faced a difficult choice. They could attempt to contain humanity, risk open conflict, or negotiate with a species that had grown far beyond the expectations of the exiling civilizations. Every option carried risk. The humans were prepared for any scenario, having studied the galaxy for centuries and trained generations for this moment. Their patience, discipline, and planning had created a civilization capable of acting decisively when the time was right. Humanity's first moves against the Council were not attacks, but demonstrations. They secured systems that had been neglected, stabilized regions of space prone to conflict, and offered alliances to civilizations willing to cooperate. These actions had multiple effects. They demonstrated capability, built goodwill, and forced the Council to take notice. It was clear to all observers that humanity was no longer a species to ignore. Their return was deliberate, measured, and strategic, showing that the exiles had not merely survived, they had become a civilization capable of shaping galactic events. The galaxy slowly began to understand that humans had changed the rules. Diplomats, strategists, and leaders studied them closely, realizing that the exiles had become masters of strategy, technology, and adaptation. Attempts to intimidate or dismiss them failed repeatedly, and even small interactions revealed their remarkable discipline and foresight. Across countless systems, the reputation of humanity grew not through fear alone, but through evidence of skill, coordination, and intelligence. By now, humans were more than just a hidden civilization. They were a symbol of resilience and capability. They had turned exile into opportunity, isolation into strength, and adversity into mastery. Every world, fleet, and colony had contributed to this transformation, and the galaxy was beginning to recognize that this was no ordinary species. Humans had returned with purpose, vision, and preparation, ready to claim a place among the stars that had once rejected them. Despite their rising influence, humans remained cautious. They knew that open conflict with the Council could be disastrous if mismanaged. Patience and observation remained central to their approach. They continued to gather intelligence, strengthen alliances, and prepare for the moment when their full strength would be revealed. Every step was deliberate, designed to reshape the galaxy's perception of humanity without unnecessary risk. As tensions rose, the Council could no longer maintain the illusion of control. Their old assumptions about humanity had been shattered. Exiled once, humans had returned stronger, smarter, and more disciplined than anyone could have imagined. The galaxy was forced to acknowledge the reality. The humans were no longer a species to dismiss, ignore, or underestimate. Their patience, strategy, and preparation had created a civilization capable of influencing events on a scale few could match. By the end of this phase, humanity had accomplished something extraordinary. They had confronted the Galactic Council without firing a single shot, reshaping perceptions and establishing themselves as a force to be reckoned with. Systems once neglected or dismissed now looked to humanity for guidance, protection, or partnership. Even those who had resisted were beginning to understand that the humans had returned not to plead for recognition, but to demonstrate that they were a civilization capable of commanding respect. Behind the scenes, humans continued their preparations. Fleets were strengthened, colonies coordinated, and strategies refined. Every action taken against or in cooperation with the Council was part of a larger plan, designed to By the time humanity's presence was fully recognized across the galaxy, it had become clear that their return could no longer be ignored. The Galactic Council and many other civilizations had underestimated humans for centuries, and now they were paying the price. But humans did not seek blind revenge. They did not aim to destroy for the sake of power. Instead, they pursued strategy, precision, and discipline, using every resource, every skill, and every fleet they had built over centuries to reshape the galaxy in a way that ensured survival, respect, and influence. Conflict came, though not in the form many expected. Humans did not charge blindly into war. Their fleets were too valuable, their networks too extensive, and their knowledge too precise. Instead, they engaged in what could be called the War of Shadows. Small skirmishes, targeted strikes, and precise maneuvers became their tools. Fleets would appear in the right place at the right time, intercepting enemy supply lines or disabling critical infrastructure without causing unnecessary destruction. Every action was calculated to weaken opponents while preserving the overall balance, forcing adversaries to recognize humans as a species that could think many moves ahead. The first major engagement tested humanity's strategy and coordination. A coalition of civilizations still holding the belief that humans could be defeated attempted to strike at a cluster of human colonies in a remote sector. The attack seemed overwhelming at first, with fleets converging from multiple directions, but humans had anticipated such moves. Using advanced communication systems and synchronized fleet movements, they responded with precision. Supply lines were cut, strategic points were defended, and the attacking forces found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. The humans did not fight recklessly. They calculated every risk and acted only where success was assured. These victories were not just military, they were psychological. Civilizations that had once dismissed humanity as a failed species now realized that they were dealing with a force that could not be easily challenged. Each engagement reinforced the perception of humans as disciplined, intelligent, and united. Rumors spread quickly through fleets and trade networks about the precision and coordination of human forces, and the galaxy began to pay close attention. Stories of human victories, carefully managed to avoid exaggeration, inspired both fear and respect. Humans also understood the power of diplomacy in war. They did not aim to annihilate every opponent. In many cases, their actions were designed to force negotiation. By demonstrating capability without unnecessary aggression, humans encouraged former rivals to consider alliances, trade, or cooperation. Systems that had once been hostile began to recognize the value of working with humanity, realizing that the humans' return was not about conquest alone but about influence, stability, and mutual benefit. Behind every fleet and operation, humans continued to coordinate across their network of colonies. Intelligence was shared quickly, and every system contributed resources, knowledge, and personnel. Fleets were not just fighting forces. They were extensions of a vast network of strategy, research, and planning. Engineers, scientists, strategists, and leaders worked together to ensure that every move was calculated and every operation successful. This level of coordination was unprecedented in the galaxy, giving humans an edge that few could challenge. The War of Shadows also revealed humans' ability to adapt. Each encounter taught new lessons. Tactics were refined, strategies adjusted, and technology improved in response to challenges. Humans learned from every failure as well as every success, turning setbacks into opportunities for growth. This adaptability made them unpredictable. Even experienced fleets could not anticipate the next move, because humans combined intelligence, creativity, and experience in ways that defied conventional understanding. Civilizations that attempted to resist humanity often underestimated the speed and precision of human response. Small fleets sent to challenge human colonies found themselves outmaneuvered, cut off, or surrounded by forces they did not know existed. Human strategies focused on minimizing destruction while maximizing strategic advantage. They targeted command centers, supply lines, and communication networks, ensuring that their opponents were incapacitated without unnecessary loss of life. This approach made humans respected not only as warriors, but as strategists who valued efficiency and intelligence over brute force. Meanwhile, humans also worked to solidify their influence in neutral systems. Many planets had remained on the sidelines, uncertain which side to support. Humans offered aid, protection, and knowledge. They helped stabilize economies, repair infrastructure, and provide technological guidance. These actions built trust and loyalty, ensuring that when open conflict expanded, humanity had allies across multiple systems. Their strategy was not simply about winning battles. It was about winning the confidence and cooperation of civilizations across the galaxy. Even as they engaged in conflicts, humans maintained discipline and restraint. They did not allow emotions to dictate strategy, and they avoided unnecessary escalation. Every commander, fleet, and colony understood the broader goal: humanity's survival, influence, and recognition. The galaxy had once thought humans weak, impulsive, and reckless. Now it began to see them as patient, intelligent, and formidable. This transformation was not achieved overnight. It was the result of centuries of preparation, learning, and adaptation. One of the most remarkable aspects of humanity's resurgence was their ability to integrate technology and strategy. Advanced communication systems allowed fleets to operate independently, yet remain coordinated across light years. Sensors and intelligence networks provided real-time information about enemy movements, planetary conditions, and potential threats. Logistics systems ensured that resources were distributed efficiently across colonies, allowing humans to maintain pressure on opponents while preparing for long-term campaigns. Every element of their civilization was interconnected, creating a level of operational efficiency few could match. The psychological impact of these conflicts was profound. Civilizations that had once dismissed humanity as exiles began to fear them, not out of hatred, but out of respect for their capability. Leaders and generals learned to think twice before attempting to challenge human forces. Rumors of their precision, coordination, and strategic foresight spread quickly, reinforcing the perception that humans had returned stronger than anyone could have imagined. The exiles had become a species feared and respected in equal measure. Despite their growing reputation, humans never lost sight of their core principles. They valued life, cooperation, and growth even in times of conflict. Their victories were measured and calculated, their strategies disciplined. They did not seek to dominate through fear alone, but to demonstrate that survival, intelligence, and unity could create a civilization capable of standing among the stars. Their actions were deliberate, ensuring that the galaxy recognized not just their power but the wisdom behind it. As the War of Shadows continued, humans expanded their influence in unexpected ways. Former rivals, seeing the precision and restraint of human forces, began to negotiate alliances. Trade routes were opened, and technology sharing became more common. The humans' return was not solely about conflict. It was about reshaping relationships, building networks, and creating a galaxy in which humanity's capabilities were recognized and respected. These alliances strengthened humans' position, providing additional resources and strategic advantages. Humanity's success in these conflicts also inspired the next generation. Children and young adults learned the stories of the War of Shadows, of fleets moving with precision, of battles won without unnecessary bloodshed, and of civilizations convinced of humanity's intelligence and foresight. They studied tactics, engineering, and strategy, preparing to carry on the work of their ancestors. This continuity ensured that humanity's resurgence was not a fleeting moment, but the beginning of a lasting presence in the galaxy. As the shadows of conflict stretched across the galaxy, humans remained united. Every colony, fleet, and leader understood the shared purpose. Coordination, communication, and planning were central to every action. Even when challenges arose, humans adapted quickly, turning setbacks into opportunities for improvement. Their resilience, discipline, and intelligence set them apart from civilizations that relied solely on force or tradition. The galaxy was beginning to realize that humanity had returned not merely as a species, but as a civilization capable of shaping events on an unprecedented scale. By the end of the first major campaigns, humans had achieved remarkable results. Systems once hostile or indifferent now recognized their value. Formerly resistant civilizations had been convinced of humanity's capability, either through direct engagement or careful diplomacy. Their fleets were stronger, their colonies more secure, and their influence across the galaxy growing steadily. The War of Shadows had demonstrated humanity's power, discipline, and intelligence without unnecessary destruction, sending a clear message: the Exiled had returned, and they were unstoppable when united. Yet even in victory, humans remained cautious. They knew that overreach could lead to conflict on a scale they preferred to avoid. Patience, planning, and precision remained central to their strategy. Every F. By the time humanity had completed its long preparation and careful strategy, the galaxy was ready, or rather unprepared, for the full scale of their return. The exiled species that everyone had forgotten had grown into a civilization of unmatched discipline, intelligence, and unity. Their fleets were vast yet perfectly coordinated, their colonies self-sufficient yet tightly linked in a web of strategy and information. They had waited patiently, studying the galaxy, learning its politics, strengths, and weaknesses. And now, humanity was ready to reveal its true power. The first signs were subtle but impossible to ignore. Humans moved fleets openly through contested regions, not attacking but asserting control through presence. Systems that had once been in turmoil were stabilized overnight. Trade routes, previously dangerous or blocked by piracy and conflict, were made safe under human supervision. Civilizations that had once scoffed at the exiles were astonished. Ships moved with precision. Systems communicated instantly across light years and colonies coordinated flawlessly. It was clear that humanity had returned not as scattered survivors but as a unified, intelligent civilization capable of operating on an unprecedented scale. The Galactic Council, which had already been unsettled by initial human actions, now faced the undeniable reality. Humans had arrived as masters of strategy and coordination. Their fleets were everywhere, yet no single ship or colony revealed the full extent of their strength. This invisibility, combined with overwhelming capability, created an aura of fear and respect. Leaders debated furiously, realizing that the exiled humans could no longer be ignored, dismissed, or underestimated. The Council could no longer act as though humans were a minor threat. They were a force that could change the balance of power across the galaxy. Humans, however, were careful in how they presented their strength. They did not seek to destroy or dominate unnecessarily. Their goal was influence, respect, and security. They offered protection to systems under threat, shared knowledge and technology with civilizations willing to cooperate, and resolved conflicts efficiently and decisively. When resistance occurred, they neutralized threats with precision, minimizing destruction but maximizing strategic impact. Every action was designed to send a clear message. Humanity was no longer a species to be underestimated, and every decision they made reflected intelligence, discipline, and foresight. The first open confrontations were a shock to many. Fleets that had assumed humans were weak found themselves outmaneuvered, trapped, or isolated. Supply lines were cut with surgical precision, and critical systems were secured before the enemy could respond. Humans did not attack blindly. They studied their opponents carefully, identifying weaknesses and exploiting them with minimal effort. Entire strategies seemed to unfold simultaneously across light years, as if every human fleet and colony acted with a single mind. Civilizations that had once mocked the exiles now understood the scale of the force they were facing. Humans also demonstrated diplomacy alongside military capability. Systems that had resisted or ignored them were offered alliances, technology, and protection. Many accepted, realizing that cooperation with humans was more advantageous than conflict. Trade networks expanded under human guidance, systems stabilized, and former rivalries began to dissolve under the influence of a species that had proven itself disciplined, intelligent, and reliable. Humanity's rise was not through fear alone. It was through a combination of strength, strategy, and opportunity. Even in the face of resistance, humans remained methodical. They avoided unnecessary destruction, preferring to neutralize threats strategically. Commanders and strategists coordinated across colonies, ensuring that every engagement furthered the long-term objectives of influence, stability, and recognition. Intelligence gathering was constant, and lessons from each encounter were immediately applied to future operations. This adaptability made humans unpredictable, capable of responding to new threats with speed and efficiency unmatched in the galaxy. The psychological impact on the galaxy was profound. Leaders, generals, and strategists began to rethink everything they knew. The species once exiled was no longer weak, impulsive, or unprepared. Humans were patient, disciplined, and remarkably clever, able to plan generations ahead. Their actions showed a civilization that valued intelligence, cooperation, and strategic advantage. Rumors and reports spread, reinforcing the perception that humanity had returned not just as survivors, But as masters of tactics, diplomacy, and coordination, humans also used the opportunity to demonstrate their values. They were a species that respected life and sought to minimize unnecessary conflict. Civilizations that cooperated with them found that humans honored agreements, shared technology responsibly, and stabilized regions rather than exploiting them. This approach created goodwill and loyalty across the galaxy, building networks of influence that were stronger than fleets or weapons alone. Humanity had learned that respect and alliances were just as powerful as military might. Behind every fleet, colony, and operation, humans maintained constant communication and coordination. Technology allowed them to share information instantly, allowing strategy and logistics to be managed across light years as if operating from a single command center. Supply lines, intelligence, and reinforcements were optimized for efficiency, ensuring that human forces could respond to threats immediately while maintaining long-term plans. Every element of their civilization was designed to support strategy, security, and growth. The turning point came when humans confronted the Galactic Council directly. Their fleets, carefully organized, appeared in strategic positions near key council systems. They did not attack immediately, but their presence alone demonstrated capability and control. Messages were sent outlining humanity's demands, recognition, respect, and cooperation. Every word reflected wisdom, restraint, and confidence, showing that humans were no longer the exiles of old, but a civilization capable of shaping the galaxy. Council leaders were forced to act. Some attempted to respond with fleets, hoping to challenge human forces. Others sought negotiation, understanding that conflict with humans could be disastrous. Every interaction revealed the depth of human preparation. Fleets were always where they needed to be. Intelligence anticipated every move, and communication ensured coordination across multiple systems. Resistance was met with skillful neutralization, not blind aggression. The Council quickly realized that humans had not only returned, they had mastered the art of war, strategy, and diplomacy in ways no one could match. As the confrontation unfolded, humans consolidated influence across previously contested regions. Planets and systems that had been neutral or resistant accepted alliances, trade agreements, and protection. Humans stabilized economies, repaired infrastructure, and provided technological guidance, demonstrating that their power was not only military, but practical and strategic. This dual approach of strength and cooperation ensured that humans were respected, feared, and trusted simultaneously. The psychological shift was profound. Civilizations that had once dismissed humanity began to fear them, but they also began to admire them. Leaders realized that humans were a species that combined patience, intelligence, and foresight with discipline and capability. They could outmaneuver, outthink, and outplan opponents in ways that no other species could match. The exiles had returned as masters of the galaxy, not through chaos or aggression, but through preparation, strategy, and unity. Humanity's rise was also a cultural triumph. Their colonies, though scattered across countless worlds, shared knowledge, values, and culture. Art, music, and education flourished even amid conflict, maintaining the human spirit across generations. Children learned the stories of exile, preparation, and the eventual return, instilling pride, resilience, and vision for the future. Every member of human society understood their role, ensuring continuity and cohesion even during the most challenging moments. In the end, humans did not seek total domination. Their goal was recognition and influence, not conquest. Systems that resisted were brought into alliances through demonstration of capability and fairness. Systems that cooperated found prosperity, security, and technological advancement. The galaxy slowly came to understand that humans were not only powerful, they were a species guided by intelligence, discipline, and vision. Their return was the fulfillment of centuries of preparation, adaptation, and learning. By the conclusion of these events, humanity had accomplished something extraordinary. They had returned from exile to reshape the galaxy, not through indiscriminate war, but through strategy, coordination, and careful demonstration of strength. They had confronted the Galactic Council and multiple civilizations, proving that patience, intelligence, and unity could achieve what brute force alone could not. The exiles had become a species feared, respected, and admired across countless systems. Humanity's story was no longer one of survival. It was a story of triumph, strategy, and mastery. They had taken the lessons of exile, resilience, patience, cooperation, and turned them into an empire of influence that spanned countless worlds. Their fleets, colonies, and networks represented centuries of preparation and intelligence. The galaxy could no longer ignore them, underestimate them, or challenge them without consequence. And yet,